A gentle breeze drifted across a rolling field on a certain spring day, transforming a moment of carefree enjoyment into a life-altering experience, filled with perspectives beyond ordinary comprehension. It was the late 70s, and a young individual, eager to step into full adulthood, decided to spend a free afternoon on horseback, convinced it was the perfect way to embrace independence and excitement. Like many people enthralled by the thrill of nature and open skies, this person believed the day held nothing more than a welcome break from routine. Yet destiny, it turned out, had other plans. Imagine a roadside stable nestled in the countryside, offering a few horses for hire to anyone looking for a quick ride. Eager for a short, invigorating outing, the individual climbed onto a steed, hoping for a peaceful gallop under a luminous sun. In that era, it felt like life was waiting around every corner. Having just started living on their own, driving an old, slightly beaten-up vehicle, and working in an energetic nightlife environment, this was a phase of discovery. Friends came and went. Dreams soared high. The horizon felt limitless indeed. Not long into the ride, the terrain seemed welcoming, the surroundings bright, and an inner sense of calm took hold. Perhaps it was the illusions of youth, or simply an underestimation of the horse's power. Soon, a spontaneous notion took over. Why not race across that open field for a dash of unbridled adrenaline? Two other riders tagging along were also enthusiastic about competition, and in that shared moment of excitement, the group broke into a steady canter, pushing their spirited animals into a run. But the magical euphoria was short-lived. Much like a sudden plot twist in a cinematic epic, the ground underneath transformed from welcoming pasture to a rugged and uneven surface. The spirited run grew uncontrollable. The fast canter turned into a wild gallop, and in an instant, worry pricked the back of the rider's mind. Holding the reins seemed increasingly futile. The horse stumbled, propelled forward by its own momentum, and that was when reality shattered. In that moment of terror, the individual felt gravity loosen its grip, as if the body had been flung into an endless void, uncertain whether the next memory would be of the Earth's harsh impact or oblivion itself. Yet something astonishing happened in that fraction of time. Instead of crashing onto stone and dirt, the consciousness released itself from the physical form as if carried by a swift, unseen current. Across numerous discussions of extraordinary phenomena, many have spoken of a tunnel or passage that bridges life and the unknown. Here, it manifested as a velvety stretch of darkness, strangely comforting, and without a visible floor, ceiling, or wall. Reality surrounding this person dissolved, replaced by what might best be described as an infinite corridor, quiet and boundless. While the physical body sustained severe damage, face striking rock, arms and legs bruised, bones possibly broken, the spirit or essence drifted in an entirely different realm. In that domain, there was no immediate sensation of pain. In fact, what replaced fear was an amalgamation of shock, confusion, and a sort of surreal acceptance. Questions raced forth. Had life truly ended? Was this a dream? Yet the clarity of each passing moment denied any possibility of mere fantasy. Despite the fear, something profound stirred in the distance. Memories of loved ones are often said to have an anchoring effect in such circumstances, and in this intricate tapestry of the beyond, a beloved grandfather figure appeared. Time had taken him in earlier years, but here, past and present, folded into a single moment, as though the boundaries of memory no longer applied. He resembled the older man once cherished in childhood. His presence emanated warmth, a paternal strength in a plane of existence with no map or blueprint. Though it felt perplexing, since the mind insisted that the man had passed long before, this presence offered instant comfort, as though to say that no one journeys alone. This was a realm beyond the physical dimension, reminiscent of countless spiritual teachings, near-death accounts, and stories told across cultures. Yet it is never the same for any two people. In this particular passage, profound lessons about existence revealed themselves. The newly arrived soul confronted an immediate reality check. It had lost a measure of identity, left behind dreams, possessions, and even the push toward independence. All that remained was pure essence, set adrift in an unbounded space. Though some might imagine that crossing over is instantly full of joy, in this case, An overwhelming swirl of loss and denial took center stage, at least initially. Nothing about it felt like a smooth transition. Guilt, sorrow, confusion, the full spectrum of emotion rushed in. Meanwhile, the realization dawned that time itself did not function here as it did on Earth. Past events, future possibilities, all coexisted in an ever-present now. Then, like pages of a journal flipping in an unseen wind, a life review commenced. This was no friendly slideshow nor a simple highlight reel. Instead, it was an unfiltered re-experiencing of every decision, every positive or negative investment of energy, every moment that led to a ripple effect in another person's existence. Bystanders might wonder how that could possibly fit into a single, compact experience. Yet to the mind in that dimension, these recollections unrolled in a rush, without a strict sense of sequential time. Picture a step-by-step tutorial of personal accountability, perceived in a matter of moments, but containing a lifetime's worth of interactions. Each memory had its own resonance. The times when a friend received comfort, the times when an innocent creature was rescued, the times when a vulnerable classmate was defended. These images glowed with an emotional warmth. But whenever a careless act of cruelty unfolded, however small, the impact of that wrongdoing became extremely clear. There was no external judge. Instead, the self acted as judge, jury, and participant. This how-to model of cosmic reflection demanded an honest reckoning with love offered or withheld, with the potential growth nurtured or stifled. If one were searching for expert tips or best practices in spiritual living, the lesson was straightforward. How you treat people, whether with kindness or harmful indifference, echoes far beyond the immediate time frame in which it occurs. Beyond the behind-the-scenes nature of a life review was a painful truth. The protagonist felt incomplete, as if life had barely begun. Thoughts of missed opportunities, the undone tasks, future joys withheld, all welled up with staggering intensity. Emotions of regret swirled. This forced confrontation with the sum of one's earthly story, an improbable vantage point on the actual consequences of every action, felt both enlightening and heartbreaking. The paternal guide, that dear grandfather, extended compassion. Yet he wasn't there to spell out universal secrets. His presence acted more like a gentle anchor in a sea of tumult, helping to calm the streams of dread and confusion. Just beyond that presence, there seemed to be a gathering of other energies or souls, though their details remained blurred, possibly because the central figure was not ready, or not permitted, to witness them clearly. At this juncture, the next revelation unfolded like a behind-the-scenes exploration of dimensional layers. In addition to everyday physical reality, there was a parallel, non-physical plane existing in the same general space. One might call it a trending now notion in certain spiritual circles, yet it felt as ancient as the dawn of conscious thought. You might imagine the ultimate guide to understanding existence, multiple realms, each separated not by distance, but by vibration or focus. Indeed, it was a step-by-step process of learning, though accomplished in a single cosmic breath, without the usual constraints of hours, minutes, or seconds. Within that dimension, the soul recognized that thoughts directly shaped the environment. Desires could manifest at will. A fleeting image or idea might instantly appear, an easy method of transformation that defied typical earthly physics. Perhaps this phenomenon explains certain miraculous tales told throughout the ages. Whether it's a viral hack for creative visualization or the best practice for mindfulness, the truth of this state soared beyond the usual limitations of human language or everyday logic. The next phase was a shift deeper into a realm brimming with energies. Described as a region even further out there, it seemed to hold a great congregation of souls, all touched by a sublime tranquility and potent unity. Words like heaven might spring to mind, but what if the puzzle is more extensive, involving source, a home base from which each soul emerges and returns? The main character experienced a brief sojourn there before being drawn back, as if glimpsing behind the scenes of ultimate truth, only to be told, "This journey continues. Your earthly path remains unfinished." This short visit to the Sea of Souls was accompanied by mesmerizing waves of ethereal music, an orchestral hum that periodically rose without specific instruments. Radiant light imbued the scene without visible sun or stars. Some might. They'd call it the latest trend in spiritual discourse to talk about merging with oneness. But for the traveler in that moment, it transcended any trend or fleeting philosophical concept. Communal joy and interconnectedness were undeniable, forging an awareness that personal identity unfolded across multiple lifetimes, multiple expressions, and multiple facets of a grand tapestry. All too soon, that horizon of oneness receded. Like a door sliding shut against a brilliant glow, the consciousness pivoted into another dimension that hovered closer to Earth's physical realm. The beloved grandfather figure reappeared, though the others beyond or behind him remained in partial obscurity. A sense of heaviness accompanied the realization that returning to an earthly body loomed. Even the notion of going back sparked a fresh wave of apprehension, yet the choice seemed less like a casual option and more like a necessity. The unfinished mosaic of earthly life called out. Or perhaps the greater design mandated continuity for reasons beyond simple explanation. Suddenly, entire portions of cosmic knowledge, newly learned insights, and grand understandings were stripped away, as though the traveler could only carry back a fraction of these revelations. That sense of having gleaned vital knowledge, only to feel it receding, triggered heartbreak. Grasping for memories now slipping through intangible fingers, the traveler recognized they would have to rely on intangible echoes of these lessons. Returning to consciousness felt like diving into dense waters after floating in pure air. Soon, there was a jolt, like a step-by-step tutorial in reverse, zipping back through that dark corridor, accompanied by a flash of confusion. Then came a surge of physical pain. The world snapped into focus. A battered body, battered bones, watchers gathered, anxious faces, hands frantically trying to help. The accident site teemed with responders, the horse likely standing off to the side, spooked and uncertain, while two strangers who had witnessed the fall worked to revive the unconscious rider. Every breath felt laborious, every limb throbbed. The abrupt contrast between the soothing dimension just left and the raw jangle of earthly pain was nearly incomprehensible. Rushed to the hospital, the body endured poking, prodding, x-rays, doctors with clipped questions. Emotions teetered between deep longing for that other place and an acute awareness of the harsh truth in the present moment. Attempts to recount the remarkable journey beyond the veil were initially met with puzzled skepticism. One physician even jumped to the assumption that the patient was under the influence of drugs. How does one communicate the intangible? The frustration was palpable, yet the mother's defense helped quell the harsh disbelief, paving the way for calmer explanations. Still, the tension of bridging two realities, one ephemeral and transcendent, the other physical and demanding, remained an ongoing struggle. Over the weeks and months that followed, the aftermath of splitting open that cosmic veil bled into everyday life. The sense of newly learned best practices for leading a more compassionate existence could not be unexperienced. Each moment in the physical realm seemed endowed with heavier significance. The step-by-step method for personal redemption grew clearer too. Kindness, empathy, and conscious behavior are not trivial nice-to-haves. They are essential cornerstones for living a path aligned with higher truths. Spellbound by recollections of those intangible dimensions, the individual found daily life equally daunting and wondrous. Meeting someone's gaze could trigger deeper resonance, an awareness that souls connect across unseen realms. The top 10 strategies for dealing with life's problems might be overshadowed by a single core principle. Do no harm, respect others' journeys, and open one's heart, for one never knows how crucial a fleeting gesture of compassion can be. In everyday situations, the near-death experienced traveler also became acutely aware of intangible aspects swirling around. As if newly awakened senses had sharpened, minor injustices or expressions of cruelty stung with renewed intensity, while small acts of generosity glowed bright with an almost transcendent beauty. Normal tasks, grocery shopping, working, or chatting with friends, were occasionally punctuated by a sense of unreality, as though a portion of consciousness was still anchored in that velvety corridor or the majestic realm beyond. One might wonder how to integrate such an extraordinary revelation into the average flow of existence. Perhaps it's similar to a behind-the-scenes tutorial on balancing new spiritual insights with everyday challenges. The hardest part can be reconciling the knowledge that physical life is fleeting with the necessity to keep pushing forward, forging goals, paying bills, sustaining relationships, and focusing on the day-to-day. Reflecting on a brush with the afterlife, it might be tempting to abandon all routine obligations, letting them slip away. Yet for the traveler, an inner sense echoed that the near-death event was not meant to derail life, but to add clarity to it. Occasionally, flashbacks returned, that memory of floating in a dimension saturated with unconditional love, joined by the wise presence of the grandfather, shaped a new moral compass. There was also the ephemeral recollection of a crowd of souls, each hue in that cosmic sea, representing different incarnations of self, an idea that challenged the typical linear worldview. Reincarnation, or simply the notion of multiple lives, soared from improbable rumor to a near certainty. Translated into normal life, this meant the traveler could not dismiss or belittle other people's perspectives so easily. After all, each person might be living out a thread of a much larger tapestry. And how does one move forward with that knowledge? Some might opt to become reclusive mystics, but that's not always feasible. Indeed, the near-death returnees strive to keep living a full, messy, joyous, and sometimes painful human life, applying a simple mantra that generosity matters more than we usually believe. Everyday obstacles might still pop up: a rushed morning commute, a stressful job environment, or financial concerns. But the newly found awareness nudged the traveler to keep perspective. These trials are small chapters in a grand storyline. If each person understood how short and precious their sojourn truly was, would they remain so invested in petty disputes? Over time, the traveler also developed a half-secret mission: to convey some form of comfort or message to loved ones still living. The impetus to share the sense of universal continuity, to demonstrate that departed family members remain conscious in realms beyond our standard perception, was strong. Relaying that message to an older relative provided a surreal sense of closure, as though bridging two worlds just for a moment. The sorrow of limited memory, of losing vast expanses of cosmic knowledge, lingered. Yet that partial amnesia, ironically, made re-engaging with the physical realm more manageable. One can only guess how overwhelming daily human life might become if the fullness of cosmic vision remained in constant conscious awareness. Eventually, physical injuries healed, though not completely, leaving behind a crooked finger and lingering aches. But the emotional and spiritual transformation endured at a deeper level. The traveler's terms of engagement with the world shifted. Act with empathy, avoid inflicting pain, aim for positivity. If any step-by-step, how to guide for better living could be gleaned from the experience, it might look like this. Recognize that every action, no matter how small, echoes into other lives. Seek compassion, a best practice that creates ripples of healing and understanding. Embrace the notion that we are more than just physical bodies. Remain open to the possibility that existence extends realms beyond the senses. Understand that arrogance has no place in a cosmos where all souls are interconnected. Cherish every laughter and sorrow, for each is a teacher in disguise. One might call this a top 10 strategy for daily wisdom, even if it's condensed into just a handful of bullet points. It's reminiscent of a gentle tutorial for the spirit, a purposeful approach to guarding hearts and lifting others up, even just by small gestures. Reflections on the near-death phenomenon also open a door to viral hacks in introspection. For instance, journaling about dreams or meditating for a few minutes each day can help integrate the intangible truths glimpsed on the threshold of mortality. Some might even discover the latest trends in psychological or parapsychological research mirror these insights, bridging spiritual and scientific perspectives. Of course, not everyone must experience a brush with death to adopt these vantage points. Simply hearing about them might stir transformation, if one remains receptive. Interestingly, the traveler also found that conventional society is not always eager to embrace conversations about the afterlife, multiple realms, or soul evolution. A few decades ago especially, such discussions risked being mislabeled or misunderstood. And yet, The longing to share the story was irrepressible, like a behind-the-scenes impetus to ensure that people understood the fragility and beauty of life. Could it spark a wave of curiosity? Might it encourage individuals to adapt easy methods for introspection, ensuring a kinder approach to each other? Possibly yes. Consider how fear of death underscores so many decisions. If a person perceived death not as a final stop, but as a gateway to another dimension, how differently might they live? Would the thirst for status surrender to a deeper desire for meaningful relationships? Would grudges melt out of recognition that unconditional love is a real currency, bridging one realm to another? This near-death experience traveler became convinced the answer was a resounding yes, gleaned from direct witness to the synergy of life choices and cosmic justice or cosmic growth. Even so, returning to everyday patterns and habits is a process that can stretch over extended periods. The human mind naturally reverts to routine, sometimes forgetting the subtle glimpses of eternity. Moments of weakness, frustration, or anger are inevitable. However, the traveler developed a method for daily recentering, like an ultimate guide for remembering the lessons, pausing before reacting, letting empathy lead rather than ego or fear, and acknowledging that each person's story is as complex as any cosmic journey. With time, the memory of the horse accident itself transformed from a traumatic event into a pivotal turning point. One might say it was the step-by-step transformation from an ordinary day out on a rented horse to a radical demonstration that existence is more layered than we suspect. The traveler's single biggest revelation, that no deed is too small to matter. Whether it's returning a lost pet to a child or simply saying a kind word to someone in distress, these moments become luminous threads embroidered into the fabric of collective memory. Over and over, the concept of a life review lingered in the traveler's thoughts. Imagine you are faced with every consequence of your actions, both good and bad, in some panoramic scope. It can be both thrilling and terrifying. This beyond-the-scenes glimpse encourages a re-evaluation of personal conduct. It reveals that we generate our own scoreboard, so to speak, not to punish ourselves, but to learn. Even if that scoreboard remains out of sight until the day we cross over, the knowledge that it awaits can help us form best practices while we're still here. Yet, perhaps the greatest question remains: why do some individuals slip into a luminous dimension upon the brink of death, while others experience different phenomena? The story does not offer a definitive how-to manual for orchestrating such events. Each near-death account has unique details, shaped by personal beliefs, cultural backgrounds, and cosmic factors unknown to our ordinary senses. But this single story might still function as an ultimate guide in one respect. It reminds us that the boundaries around identity, love, and existence are far more flexible than we typically imagine. While the mainstream world often values outward achievements, career successes, or wealth, the traveler's new perspective underscores that intangible qualities, like the capacity for compassion, can define us in an expanded sense. These qualities are the behind-the-scenes currency that we carry forward, unbound by our final breath. So maybe adopting top 10 strategies for daily empathy is not just a moral choice, but an investment in the unknown realms that surround us. Still, doubts and uncertainties will arise. That's part of being human. Could a near-death episode simply be the brain's coping mechanism? The traveler asked this too. Yet deep down, the lived quality of that out-of-body vantage felt more tangible than waking reality. The swirling black corridor, the protective presence of a beloved family figure, the vibrant sea of spiritual energy, none of it resembled a fleeting hallucination. And those persistent emotional shifts, they survived the return to normal consciousness, suggesting that something profoundly real had taken place. A certain grief also remained for that luminous environment, a yearning to rejoin it, coupled with the knowledge that earthly responsibilities continue. In the tutorial of living, that longing can't be ignored. Many who encounter near-death experiences describe a transformative tension. Part of them hungers for that unconditional love and sense of belonging, but they accept that they have tasks to complete in this physical realm. Perhaps that is the cost of glimpsing beyond, holding the memory of wholeness while navigating the partial illusions of day-to-day life. To ease that journey for themselves, the traveler occasionally employed easy methods for connecting with a sense of higher resonance: gentle meditation, mindful walks in nature, or quiet reflection on personal relationships. All of these can be subtle, viral hacks for anchoring spiritual awareness in routine living. It might not be trending now in the typical sense of social media popularity, but it resonates as timeless wisdom that can help maintain emotional equilibrium. Slowly, with new goals shaped by a desire to radiate positivity, the traveler entered fresh chapters of life: new jobs, new acquaintances, maybe even new heartbreaks. Existence carried on, just as it always had, yet enhanced by a glimmering knowledge that each interaction ripples past the boundary of a single lifetime. The traveler found solace in the recognition that they were never truly alone, guided by the memory of that loving presence from the other plane. The paternal figure felt near, even though physically absent. It was like having an unseen mentor, a comforting sensation that sometimes flared into vivid recollection of that other dimension. Even medical consultations or therapy sessions often circled back to that day in the field. Health professionals might have questioned the details, but the traveler's convictions never wavered. If anything, disbelief from outsiders steeled the traveler's resolve, providing impetus to share the testimony with those who might benefit. In that sense, the story mirrored a classic top 10 strategies approach to spiritual activism. Quietly plant seeds of open-mindedness wherever possible, maintain empathy when met with doubt, reject bitterness and embrace compassion, and remain patient with personal healing. If someone stumbles upon this narration, uncertain whether to interpret it as a spiritual step-by-step guide or an allegorical fable, it might help to remember that lived experience trumps theory. The traveler's near-death story highlights life lessons, not dogmas. This is not persuasion so much as personal sharing. The real invite is for each person to adopt best practices that resonate, focusing on empathy, community, and love. The behind-the-scenes glimpse of that sea of souls can be an inspiration to build a better present. So the culminating message from this saga is fairly simple. The timeline of this world is uncertain, so spending it generously, kindly, and reflectively is not just a moral suggestion. It might be the ultimate mission. The horse accident from years past served as the gateway, but the deeper narrative is universal. Perhaps that is why these accounts can become trending now in spiritual circles. They open a door to introspection and accountability, bridging the everyday with the profound. All told, the battered body eventually healed enough to function again, though mild injuries remained as daily reminders of that fateful encounter. Meanwhile, the soul pressed on, seeking to turn ephemeral clarity into actionable wisdom. Day after day, the traveler practiced making amends, sharing positivity, and remembering how ephemeral life can be. One does not have to walk perfectly, one simply has to walk mindfully. Returning to that original vision, a beautiful day in the countryside, an energetic horse, and an aspiring soul who had yet to taste the fullness of adulthood, feels surreal after the transformation. The entire experience might be labeled as a dramatic demonstration of cosmic truths, but from a more straightforward perspective, it is just life unfolding in unexpected ways. Tucked inside it are the how-to steps for a deeper awareness. Embrace compassion, remain open to wonder, and never underestimate the power of small acts of kindness. Those lessons shine on, forming the spine of a personal, ultimate guide to living, gleaned from an extraordinary brush with the unknown. Within this story, many questions go unanswered. Where exactly does the consciousness go? Why does the universe operate in layered dimensions? Is there a broader plan guiding these experiences? The traveler may not claim to have final answers, but their testimony affirms that the universe, or multiverse, teems with far more possibility than conventional reason might grasp. The lasting effect is an abiding sense of reverence for life's fragile, glorious dance. At its core, this is not a message of fear, it is an invitation to awaken. If you knew you might face your own life review tomorrow, how differently would you handle conflict today? If you believed your journey endures beyond your last breath, how earnestly would you nurture compassion now? As a step-by-step reflection, The traveler's story offers no dogma, only a stirring call to honor the priceless gift of existence, no matter how fleeting it might appear. Even as memories of the cosmic dimension fade, that quiet flame of insight continues to guide every new sunrise. It is both an intensely personal and a universally resonant truth. And perhaps, in the final analysis, the near-death experience was never about clinging to heavenly wonders or cosmic fireworks. It was always about returning here, to an imperfect but vital world, with a renewed dedication to love, sacrifice, and empathy, thereby elevating the everyday into something more meaningful. That might be the greatest treasure gleaned from a glimpse beyond. Not just to understand that life goes on, but to live fully in the knowledge that every moment matters. To share a small portion of that cosmic perspective. To whisper across the divide that what truly stays with us is the love we cultivate and the compassion we extend. And if you ever find yourself racing toward the unknown with unstoppable velocity, maybe you too will discover that sometimes, in the split second you think you're falling, you are actually learning how to fly.